Hello and welcome to the Boiler Up YouTube show. Excited to have two buddies on from Boilers in the Stands, Kraig Bowers and Joe Jackson. Kraig with a K, Joe with a J.
Yes.
Just to get that. This is the show where Braden Smith never posts up, and we're going to talk about the Creighton exhibition game, which happened, I do believe, 2 nights ago. Purdue did lose to Creighton 93-87. First of all, Kraig, Joe, how you guys doing? Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, doing good. Appreciate you having us on.
Yep. Doing well. I'm excited to talk some Purdue basketball again.
Yeah, we are getting very close. There is one exhibition game between us and the start of the regular season next week. We did get to watch some basketball on Saturday, though. I know Craig's been able to see a couple practices during the summer. Joe, I'm assuming you watched some of the public little scrimmage that happened. And we all got to watch the Creighton game, even though we can't replay it because technology. First of all, we'll go through some things, but is there anything, I'll start with you, Kraig. Is there anything that just stood out to you about the Purdue Creighton game?
I did some looking today, actually, because the thing that jumped out to me, I could not remember a time where there was like a big three at Purdue for quite a while, where they were a very high percentage of the point production. There's been eras where it was Zach Edey and then a bunch of guys kind of in a different role, or Carson Edwards and then some guys backing him up. And there's been some eras where there were 4 people that were all kind of in that 12 to 15 point range. But if this is what it is, we don't know, obviously, and things are going to change. But if we're going to have this big 3 and then everybody else is maybe in that 10 point range or less, probably less, right? Based upon just taking what happened the other day. The last time I could find an example was the Baby Boilers, right? With Etuan, Juwan, and Robbie. All 3 of those guys were 16 points or higher. And then I think the next highest, the next highest guy was under 10 points. So a big 3 can work, I guess is what I was saying.
Yeah. Obviously Baby Boilers, pretty good sign. It's always weird when it's 3 freshmen. This is a little different. But we will touch on that in one moment a little further, I think. So okay. Joe, is there anything to you that just kind of highlighted or jumped off the screen when you watched it?
Yeah. Braden Smith does not need Zach Edey to score the ball. I think that's the big thing that many people, I think Purdue fans probably weren't too worried about. I think national media overplayed that side of the ball with Edey's loss a little bit. And I think right away you saw him, TKR, obviously it's kind of picking back off Craig's point, but Braden Smith, TKR, and then Lawyer obviously too, but like they're going to be able to score the ball just fine. It's not going to be, that side of the ball is not going to be too much of the concern. Maybe they don't shoot the ball from 3 quite as well, but Braden Smith is really, really good at basketball, and it doesn't matter really who's on the floor with him.
Yeah, one of the things that stood out most to me post-game is just how much appreciation we probably did not have for Zach Edey's defense. Because when you start doing the math and you're like, Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, TK, these are all bad defenders. Bad to moderately okay, just individually. And the last 2 seasons, Purdue was dominant on the defensive end. And if that Creighton game was any indication, a whole lot of that had to do with Zach Edey. But let's go ahead and jump into our Halloween game, Trick or Treat. I'm going to tell you something that happened or a thought I had from the game, and you guys are going to give me trick, as in you don't believe what happened, or treat, you do believe in it and it's going to continue. And the first one, something you mentioned, Kraig, trick, bad, treat, good, Kraig.
Okay. I was working on it. I was trying to get my head level. So I don't have any hair. So adjusting the camera, I have to take that into account. I was trying to get our head levels all the same there. So I apologize.
I'll make sure not to screw that up for you.
So trick, bad, treat, good. That's what this is. All right. I got it. Let's do it.
My first thing I have written down here, the big 3. Do we believe this big 3 is good enough? And do we believe it is a big 3? Trey Kaufman ran Braden Smith, Fletcher Loyer combined for 70 of Purdue's 87 points against Creighton. That is a whole lot of scoring between those three. We'll start with you, Kraig.
So I'm going to go with Treat in terms of that continuing. I don't think it'll continue to that degree, right? But I do think there's a definite defined big three on this team. I am comfortable saying I think they all average 15 points or more a game, at least. And then I think there's going to be a lot of support roles around that.
Yeah, Joe, same question. And I'll also add just with Smith and Loyer and TKR, how they operate together. How much of just those three on the court is a functioning offense? Does it really matter what two other guys do next to them?
Yeah, so I'm with Kraig on this of like treat, but not. I'm not expecting what would be like 75-80% of the points. I would expect others to contribute a little bit more. I also think just the way Creighton plays defense, it's closer to similar to UConn where they don't provide a lot of help. It doesn't open up opportunities for shooters, yada, yada. In terms of the big three just being a good offense, like, yeah, for the most part, like I think if we're there's no like you can't do like the extremes, right? I don't think like a T Carrot the three lineup with Jacobson and Berg would work. But in legitimate lineups, yes, I think you can more or less put functioning space. You've got anybody that can provide any sort of like functional spacing around them. Maybe you can do a big that can also just kind of rim run. You're going to have a pretty good offense. Obviously, maybe it's not like the number one, depending on who's around them, but you're going to have a really good offense with those three just because they complement each other so well. They all Smith's the ball handler, TKR is the post up, and Lawyer's catch and shoot, attack, close out the guy.
Yeah. I mean, that's just pretty much how every good NBA team has been beat in the last or been built in the last decade, 2 decades.
And I mean,
a big three scorers and
now, right?
support.
Yeah, it definitely worked against Creighton offensive wise. I think touching on this, another trick or treat for you, Kraig. And I'd also like to know. So Miles and Colvin scored 2 points altogether. Miles and Camden Heidi. Heidi doesn't take a single shot. Is that trick or treat? Is that real? Or are they going to be more involved? And more so, do you want to see something different with the rotation, the way Painter used them compared to how he used them? Obviously in one game, but against Creighton.
There's a lot of layers to this trick or treat there, Casey.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely going trick on this.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm definitely going trick on this. I don't think that's what those two will look like in most games going forward. In all honesty, and we kind of hit on this the other day, but I mean, they were given that to Braden and to Fletch, right? And what you want to see in those situations is if they're going to give Braden that space and stay locked on to everybody else and not jump him, not try to trap him, not try to do anything up high to really disrupt him initiating the offense, you want him to be a killer. And that's who he was. So I think had they done those things so that there were some disadvantage or advantages created offensively that got them chasing and got open looks for guys because they were out of position, then I think you see that ball spraying out to those two guys and they're hitting shots. As far as the rotation thing, I don't know how much we can tell for sure on like what are real rotations and what aren't from that game. I will say, I guess I was just a little bit surprised when Miles in the game, to me, he's in there to score. Like that is his role, like fire away. And I was a little bit surprised maybe they didn't run more specifically for him in the minutes that he was in the game.
Yeah, it's always hard. That's maybe the most difficult part about coming off the bench in the way he does. Is it's easy for if you're only playing 13 minutes, you can have like a 3-minute stretch and get a couple shots up, but you're not going to be able to run the offense continuously for him. And in that regard, Joe, what did you see of the way they used Miles Colvin that might have been different than how they did last year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the first thing is there was so much Smith and Loyer that it was hard just to run stuff for Colvin. Looking through the minutes, I think Colvin played, it looks like 5 total minutes without Fletch on the floor. So there's just, I think if they're ever sharing the floor, as of right now, a lot of those looks are just going to go to Fletcher Lawyer. And Fletcher Lawyer is already option 3 on the floor. And that makes it hard to get any designed looks just because you got a limited number of possessions. I would like to see a little bit more. Like, to me, I think he's closer to the Fletcher Lawyer role. And they go about it in a little bit different way, but to me, they have a lot of overlapping skills and similarities in how they want to produce on the floor. And so it would be these handoffs and these pin downs for Colvin that they run for Lawyer. You saw it a little bit for CJ Cox even when he got in. I would hope to see more of that, which is I think the ideal role for Colvin. Last year was a lot of spot ups. You'd get those sprinkled in every once in a while. I think for this game specifically, we kind of mentioned there just weren't the opportunities for the spot ups like there were last year. And that's a big part of, that's going to be a high percentage of Colvin shots is a kick out, either catch and shoot or 1-2 dribble pull up. And they just weren't there at all for them against the Creighton defense.
Yeah. Painter mentioned that after the game, part of why they didn't get shots. Creighton is so aggressive with that drop that they send Kalkbrenner so far deep. And the point of that is really so you don't have to send help off of shooters.
Yep.
And that I don't know if it worked because like Purdue's offense worked, but like it definitely limited what Cam and Miles could do. I'm curious, Kraig, do you think there's something is Miles and Fletcher redundant in a way where maybe going forward you separate those two and you keep Cam attached to Fletcher more and you use Miles when you need to fill in for Lawyer?
No, I think definitely, and I think that's what we thought going into this game. Maybe we'd see more of, and what Joe, you said 5 minutes total without Fletcher on the floor.
Yeah, I'm gonna give a plus or minus of 1. It's not the most exact chart rotation.
Yeah, I mean, really, I think Miles is a nice fit with Jakari, and whether that's in the point guard role or whether Braden's still playing point guard and Jakari's out there as well, and then let Miles kind of be that scorer that's, getting those handoffs and coming off of those pin downs. But I'm sure he's going to tinker with that throughout the year. Well, I don't know. Like I guess when you're done with this game, you can't look back as Painter and be like, well, we didn't do enough offensively. I highly doubt that's where practice is focused right now. So it'll be interesting to see how he adjusts going forward. But yeah, definitely. I would like to see it more where Miles is kind of in his role, I guess, on the court.
Yeah, you said a magic name there, Jakari. We'll move on to the freshman. We'll keep the charade up of this trick or treat game. Trick or treat, the 2 true freshman guards, Joe, CJ Cox, Jakari Harris. Not a ton of production, and what there was, it was mostly CJ Cox in half the minutes. But what did you see? What did you like? Are you encouraged by those 2 guards?
Yeah, if we're keeping up with the trick or treat, like treats on everything that they do. And I mentioned Jakari starting a while ago, like during the summer. I was like, I'm not shocked if it happens. I didn't expect it to be game 1, truthfully. And that's just what I think of Jakari. And CJ Cox is, all 3 of us have talked offline about CJ Cox at various points throughout the offseason. He's a dude and he's a gamer. And offensively, I'm not worried about the 1 game sample size for Jakari. I think he was like 1 for 5. Defensively, probably was a little over aggressive. Whatever, exhibition game, I'm not too concerned about that. They're just like both, especially Jakari in that starting lineup. I love it because he's like the perfect 5th man he doesn't need the ball at all. And depending on who's starting and what you get out of that production, like Jakari's the 4th or 5th option, and then he's going to be the lead defender. And he has some size. He moves really well. He hustles. And CJ Cox also checks off a lot of those boxes. He probably gives you a little bit more on ball, just pop on the offensive side. It kind of relates back to Colvin because I think really it's going to be those 3 kind of competing for those minutes. And as of right now, a lot of things can change, but as of right now, I just don't see how Painter keeps Harris and Cox both off the floor or even one of them.
Similar question, Kraig, but to add to it, when you're reaching into your candy bag on Halloween, do you want to pull out a Jakari or do you want a CJ Cox right now? Which Which one? Careful.
I'd rather pull them both out
Yeah.
and use them, but I guess I've been really high on CJ all the way through. So I think where this conversation gets interesting is, and I think Painter said this too, depending on matchups this year, we can expect different lineups. And within game, regardless of who starts, we could see massively different things depending on who gets minutes during games. If the big three are scoring like they did the other day, I think Jakari is the better piece. I don't think he looked great defensively in this game, but we've seen him in practice. It felt like he was trying to do too much and kind of live up to the hype of being this ultimate defender. But we know he is, right? We've seen it in practice over and over again. We've heard coaches talk about it. So I think he's that piece if those three are going off. Now, if Fletch is having an off night, if Braden's having an off night, then I think you reach into that bag and you grab CJ really quick because the drop off defensively is not that much. In my mind, I think Painter likes him coming off the bench so that there's a scoring punch to that second wave of somebody that can create off the dribble. But if the three starters aren't on and locked in scoring wise that night, I could see CJ getting yanked out of that bag and being tossed in there for 20 to 25 minutes in some games.
Yeah, this is something I saw first start to develop in the summer. I think there's definitely something to Jakari playing with scorers because he doesn't need the ball. But I think Jakari with his size is going to get more wing minutes than I thought. But I think the backup point guard minutes are going to almost go exclusively to CJ Cox at this stage. I think he's a little more natural running an offense. He's got the mid-range pull-up game. He's a good shooter. He just needs to be a little more aggressive. Joe, I'm curious, is it functional to play Cam Heide at the 3 with 2 bigs?
Yes, I think it has to be Smith and Lawyer at the 1 and the 2. Maybe you could throw Cox in at the 2. I think you need 2 scores around there.
Mm-hmm.
TKR is obviously in at the 4. Those would be the matchups, like thinking back to last year, maybe like a Wisconsin where you have this high profile kind of bigger wing in AJ Storr where you want to match him up there. And you kind of need his size on the wing defending the perimeter because he can defend the perimeter. I still think he's like long-term, probably a better fit at the 4 if he can guard 4s. I've kind of like my comp has been like, basically just what if Mason Gillis was mobile and athletic? Like that just kind of feels like the upside to Heide. And like, I mean that in the most positive way possible, of just this good defender, defend on the perimeter, catch and shoot threes. Heide maybe has a little bit more of a 1-2 dribble, get to the rim. And that's where I think he could take advantage of 4s, but he can play the 3 as well. And I think was shown last year. I would expect it to go this year. It could make spacing a little weird, but he's a good enough shooter. Assuming the shooting holds, that teams will respect it, and I think it's fine.
There's nothing about Camden Heide's shot that makes me think it won't stick.
Yeah.
It's just a question of, does he have anything else really to add to the bag on the offensive end in the half court? But do we think, Kraig, the starting 5 stays throughout the season? And not because of injury?
Well, first of all, before we get there, I've heard you mention a couple of times like difference in size between Jakari and CJ. They're both listed at 6'3", 200.
Jakari's bigger.
Do we definitively think that Jakari's
bigger? I've had this. When I think of CJ Cox, I think like 6'1", 170. And I know that's
not true. He's bigger, but
yeah, that's underselling
Jakari's
that. But like, yeah, I've had that. I literally get it confused in my head because when I think of CJ, I'm literally like, oh, he's smaller. And then I literally just double checked and I was like, oh yeah, no, he's like listed the same. It doesn't compute in my head.
Allen Iverson was 6'1" and Kevin Garnett was 6'11", according to their bios. So these things are not to be trusted.
Fair enough. I don't think there's that much height difference between the two.
I don't either.
I think it's just like the way I think Harris is like, he's closer to Lance Jones build to me, where CJ feels a little more slender. Not that he's not like weak by any means, but that's where I think that's what throws me off.
I think it's encouraging that both of them are on the bigger side. To
Yeah.
me, they both, neither of them looked like true freshmen. We have seen true freshman guards, even ones that have played well, but they look like freshman guards physically. You could probably argue Braden and Fletcher both look more like freshman guards than either of those two probably ever have in their life. Just to be fair.
Now, what was your question again? I've forgotten now.
Oh, do you think it'll be this starting five all year?
No, I think we'll see at least.
Hmm.
I'm going to go at least 8 different versions of a starting lineup throughout the year.
8?
Well, you have to think if you. So if the
every
5 spot
3 nights.
If the 5 spot changes, and then if another position changes, that compounds in terms of where you get to. And that's not out there. We had 10 different starting lineups a little while ago. We had 7 or 8 a couple of years ago.
My counter is Painter doesn't normally change a starting lineup if they win.
Yes.
True.
So it's a lot of L's on the board, Greg.
I don't think we are going to go through an undefeated non-conference season again. So I think we'll see some changes. And I don't think necessarily, especially with the 5 spot, that it's going to be locked into we don't change the 5 if we're winning.
Yeah. I think it'll change a couple times, but it'll go back to something it already was. So I don't know if we're counting that as a full change. To me, that's the same starting. But another thing that happened that kind of set off some of the alarms for me, Purdue was 15 of 24 from the free throw line. And Joe, is that a trick or a treat?
I'm trying to remember specifically who shot what.
Braden Smith missed 2 of them.
Yeah, I do remember that. That was surprising. I assume TKR took a few. CJ was 2 of 4,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The only one who didn't miss was Fletcher Lawyer.
Your rundown was Lawyer 7 of 7, Smith 2 of 4, TKR 2 of 5, CJ 2 of 4, Jacobson 2 of 4.
I'll go slight trick then. I would expect Braden to be better. TKR is probably still a little bit better than that. CJ's probably a little bit better. Jacobson could be better. I'll go treat. I don't think it'll be that bad. Last year they were, or what did I say? Treat or trick? Trick.
You've said both now.
I mean trick.
You're
trick
really.
Is what I mean. They were 74% last year. That was the 80th best. And let's see. D1 average was roughly 72%.
That sounds right to me.
That feels about right then. Yeah. Somewhere right about average.
Does it worry you, Craig, that above everything else, because we kind of saw CJ, good shooter. We've seen him make, 23s in a row at a practice in the summer. But there's a lot of nerves being a freshman shooting a free throw for the first time. Do we worry about free throws and then maybe just late games in general, something Purdue's been pretty good at the last couple of years, when you do switch the rotation to so many young guys?
I think some of that free throw wise was just being in that situation for the first time. But if you watched all 3 times that CJ, so he goes 1-1, but he gets to the free throw line on the other 2, and he moves at his own pace and just looks so calm and cool and collected about everything he does that I'm not sure that guy gets nervous or amped up that much. I just think he's one of those guys that kind of has an even keel, and I'm not worried about end of game situations because Braden Smith's going to have a ball in his hands in any end game situation.
Not been great at the free throw line late in games.
Oh, we're specifically talking about the free throw line.
Late in games. I mean, part of that is making free throws if you get there. I do think there is an exhaustion factor late in a game, that much extra work. And like Braden is going, if we learn nothing else, Braden is going to get a workout in.
Yeah.
Joe, I do want to touch, this isn't part of the game, but just on what we saw from Braden Smith, because it really was a complete 180 reversal of how he has played his entire career beforehand. 31 points would have been a career high. I think. Just how sustainable what he did, like how sustainable did it look to you what he did on the floor?
I would say mainly sustainable. I think he's going to have a tougher shot diet in general, and that is going to lead to some not great efficiency games. Also, 23 shots, like that's not going to happen every game. Creighton, we kind of talked about, right? Designed specifically like drop coverage, Braden Smith, that pull up is there. Like I said on our post game show, I would have been worried if Braden Smith didn't take 23 shots this game. Like that would have concerned me more than him taking it. No, I'm not expecting him to average 31. I do expect him to be a probably top 2 leading scorer on this team, whether it's him or TKR. And just the way that he's going to get the shots, like he's going to be able to create a lot of those shots pretty consistently. It's going to be a little bit tougher shots. There's going to be games where he misses. There's also going to be games like that one where it's just like he's kind of getting whatever he wants. 5 for 11 from 3 is the big thing to me, where he is very willing to just shoot off the dribble threes. Any under, automatic 3. Multiple times you just saw some good screens, immediate 3. And then obviously I think he had like 1 or 2 catch and shoot in there. The willingness to shoot those threes, he's obviously going to sprinkle in mid-range shots, but the threes are going to be very, very important. The assist was, he only had 4 assists. The assist numbers are going to naturally just drop a bit because I think he'll create the same looks for players. It is simply as like, this is no disrespect to anybody. Nobody's as good as Zach Edey at finishing at the rim. And so just, even if you create all the same looks, but you give them to TKR and Berg and all these other guys, they're just going to naturally miss a few more. But it was still good to see him be able to facilitate. Like he had 4 assists. I can think of like 3 plays off the top of my head where players just missed open shots.
Couple TKR buckets were assists. They didn't get counted because they took a little while as well.
Yep. So no, I was super excited to see what Braden did. And I think throughout the summer, I became more and more confident that like he was just going to be fine without Edey. And then seeing that, even though it's an exhibition, it was very much like, oh yeah, Braden Smith's just good. Like he is just elite.
Kraig, how good is Braden Smith? Is he right now, this moment, the best point guard in Purdue history?
Wow, you really put me on the spot here.
I don't even think it's a blind yes for me.
Right. Well, we got 2 years of production. You got some guys in the books with 4 years of production. I think in the Painter era, for certain. I think he's the best point guard in the Painter era right now already. I think we'd have to go back in the record books and check some stuff like going back to like the 3 amigos in that team. Because you got some guys that are pretty high up there in Purdue record books. I am comfortable saying he will go down as the best point guard in Purdue history. But if you're asking me right now, I'm going to hold off just a little bit until at least that third year of production's in the books. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I tend to be timid about stepping on like the greats, the Purdue greats. I put something out his freshman year and Kramer jumped in to the Twitter thread. Ooh. It was like, hold on now, hold on. And I was like, okay, all right. Got to be careful about whose toes I stepped on in the future. So, yeah.
Braden's the best point guard in Purdue history. I'll throw that in there.
We are a little younger, so I guess we don't appreciate the history, but
yeah.
Joe, I'm curious. We talk a lot, or Zach Edey was obviously a cheat code on offense. But Braden's willingness to make these off the dribble threes, the amount of attention and gravity, it's like the opposite side of the court. But doesn't that kind of work in a similar way to how dominant Edey was inside? That if he is going to be this good in pick and rolls, off the dribble, shooting like that, he's going to create a ton of points off of that, right?
Yeah, if that type of efficiency holds up, absolutely. And then the teams are already going to be in a real bind about what they want to do. But if he is really able to make these shots off the dribble, and that's why I think it's so important, is like teams have to decide then. You basically are going to pick Do you want Braden Smith to be a scorer this game, or do you want him to be a facilitator? Right? Edie kind of had this. You had the similar thought with Edie for the past 2 years of like, do you double and just try to make him kick out? And then last year, Purdue was the second best 3-point shooting team in the country. Or do you just let him go one-on-one like Michigan State and drop 40 and you live with that? Braden Smith has potential to put those questions in defense's heads as well. I think it's probably going to take a couple games for some teams to really, really respect the pull-ups right away. Obviously, he's proven he can do it, but they're still just going to kind of have to pick their poison. I could see, especially with, it's going to kind of also depend on how they guard TKR. Like, if they're going to double TKR, then they might just let Braden do his thing. If they take away Braden Smith, are they still giving a ton of attention to TKR? Because then if that happens, that's where Lawyer has to be good. And that's where Heidi and Colvin really, and all really up and down the roster, all of kind of the quote unquote role players have to be able to knock down an open shot. Because with Braden Smith being so dominant, we think TKR is going to be very good. Defenses are either going to get burned by them or they're going to do a lot to make everybody else try to burn them. I would expect that to happen more, where you could see Braden Smith have these 8 assist games if guys can knock down shots.
Yeah, one of the most sustainable and healthy things I saw out of Purdue's offense was how quick TKR gets to that short roll and how good Braden Smith is at getting him the ball right away. And that is with the team playing drop, like as extreme a drop as you're ever going to see. If you start hedging and TKR is allowed to do that, and he has another big around him, you're playing 2-on-1 at the hoop. And
they did it once.
That is very sustainable. That's going to get you a lot of threes and a lot of dunks. So I think part of the reason why this has been such a chipper conversation is we've been talking about offense. Switch it over for a second. Kraig, trick or treat. Purdue's defense, which gave up 93 points and 36 of 60 shooting, an astonishing 23 of 32 shooting inside the arc for Creighton. That is 30 shot attempts, 9 misses inside the arc. How are we feeling about that?
Yeah, so I'm going to go trick there. I think it will be better.
Can't be worse.
I don't know that this group will ever be as elite as it was last year. But I think it can be better. I think it's really important that we have to remember that every one of those bigs that played the 5 spot outside of Caleb was really playing true minutes for the first time. And we hear everybody talk about how complex Purdue's team defensive system is and all of that sort of stuff, and just making sure you're in the right position throughout and making the right rotations and making the right reads, calling out the right things to your teammates based upon scouting reports, which Purdue didn't do. And that's my second part to this is Purdue tends to play pretty good defense without what we would call elite athleticism year in and year out. And I think a lot of that is the scouting report and the fact that they play as a cohesive unit and stick to that scouting report. And it's not a bunch of just mano a mano. I'm going to shut you down as an individual defender. So I think for both of those reasons, it's going to get better. Even like and Joe and I talked about this before, but think it's really, really important that we have some perimeter disruptors. And I think Jakari will be way better at that game 2, game 3, game 4 as we move in. Just don't think we really got to see it too much because he was trying to do too much last night. So I think they will be better, but I think it's going to be a little bit of a struggle all year. And when we get into discussing the 5 spot, I think that's where that convo is going to go of like, do you just not give up on being good defensively, but do you give up the idea of we can be an elite defensive team and just go, hey, we need to score 80 a game or more?
That is the first little trinket that Kraig has laid down for his Burgess plea to come later.
It's not even where I was going with that.
Joe, what are the buttons and avenues that Purdue can go down to improve on what they showed against Creighton? Which, to be fair, Creighton has one of the best systems in college basketball. very disciplined, very experienced. And you could argue that what would you like to not see against a bunch of freshmen and big guys that haven't played? Ryan Kalkbrenner, guy who can go outside, inside, who's huge, finishes everything. But what can Purdue do that you see to help pretty immediately? Because games are going to happen very shortly and they need to be a lot better.
Yeah, I think it goes to rim protection first, or just interior protection. Creighton was 16 of 22 at the rim. That just can't happen. That's where Edie's probably being missed the most. And I think I've said this multiple times, but like all the people this whole offseason that were picking on Braden Smith because they thought he wouldn't be good without Edie, like they ignored the side of the ball that Purdue fans couldn't, like, if people were like, hey, how's Purdue going to defend without Edie? I don't think Purdue fans could be like, really come back at, because it's just like, I don't know. I don't know how they're going to defend. Obviously pressuring the ball. Not that Creighton had 13 turnovers, right? It's not like they didn't force turnovers. We saw CJ rip a couple times. I think Jakari got a steal. No, he did not have a steal, but
Lawyer had two.
Yeah. So the perimeter pressure needs to stay and probably just keep getting better. The two biggest things is rim protection, and also combined with how do these guards navigate screens. It's great if, for even CJ and Jakari, it's great if you could just stay in fronts and rip the ball. But can you get around screens? Can Fletcher and Braden get around off-ball screens? Which, to your point about Creighton, number 3 offense in Ken Pom preseason, they run a ton of off-ball action. That is who they are. That is who they have been. Braden and Fletch, and honestly, I'm not even like every
Jakari
single guard
was awful.
Every single guard, I would say, like, just could not move around screens. And now that's putting your big in an even tougher spot where it's like maybe Berg or First or Jacobson or Burgess, I'll just name all of them. Like maybe they look a little better if there is a little bit more guard help that isn't allowing these drives and stuff just as easily, right? I don't think it's realistic to expect these Purdue guards to just lock up and stay in front of everybody, but you can make life a little bit harder. And maybe instead of straight at the rim, they are taking 1 or 2 steps outside of the paint as they come in. The little things like that, just being able to stay attached through screens is going to be gigantic for this team. And part of it's also, I think, at times the conservative Purdue defense, where they try to, especially with Edie these past few years, you force everything to Edie. And so that means you are going to play a step or two behind, because you don't want guys, if you overplay, that means guys are going to backdoor or they're going to flare screen or whatever. And now you have nobody to help. It's just a tough balance, because when you get behind like that, because you're trying to force into a big, you probably need a really good big there to protect the rim. Purdue can maybe have that down the road. They do not have that right now. And I don't think really much capacity.
Let's just go ahead and jump into it. We've laid off the big men to this point. Overall, very unproductive day. Pretty much throughout all of them, you saw pretty much your biggest concerns with all of them showed up in fruition in game 1. Kraig, who do you so Wilberg will go real quick, 9 minutes, 4 fouls, no rebounds. I want to stick on that, because I think, Kraig, you were talking in the live, which you guys do, Boilers in the stands after every game?
Yep. After every game. So you're in there talking, and I remember you going like, I just feel like Berg's a better rebounder, which, he didn't have any rebounds, so it wasn't the case in that game. Right.
But part of your coloring for that, I'm sure, is we watched summer practice. We watched scrimmages that were entirely derailed by the fact that Wilberg grabbed about 4 offensive rebounds in a row. He is, in theory, everything we've seen game-wise or practice-wise, the best rebounder on this team.
Yeah.
Do you think that translates to playing other teams? Can he?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. But I mean, that's a problem. None of us know, because like Berg hasn't played significant minutes, really at any point in time in his career. Jacobson hasn't either. Burgess hasn't either. So you have to see it in real reps, in real time against other teams. But Not just what we saw in practice, but but the Purdue
Don't mention
coaching
the
staff,
final 2 minutes of a game.
the Purdue coaching staff doesn't blow smoke. Like they don't. They just say it how it is, and all summer long it's been he's the best screener and he's the best rebounder in practice by far and away, right? No questions asked. And then you watch the game and it's like, oh, he's got 0 rebounds. Jacobson ends up with 5. Thought he did some nice things as a screener. Pretty sure he got called for a foul on at least one of those. At least one of his fouls was a offensive. Was 3 of them were?
It was at least 2.
Okay. Maybe that's
the
some
third
jitters.
one was a screen. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's some jitters and just trying to jump off of it too quick, or I don't know. I hope so. I hope he's the better, or not the. I shouldn't say I hope he's the better rebounder, but I hope he rebounds effectively. But I think it's something that we're just going to have to see in real time. I know talking to some of the guys who got to watch the in-house Purdue scrimmages, not the one that was open to the public, that one of the things they said about Jacobson was he scrimmages better than he practices. Basically, when they were playing like a true game situation, Jacobson looks better than he does just in like normal day-to-day practice. So some guys are gamers and some guys aren't. So maybe there's a little bit of that factor too. But I think the bigger point here is everything that we've thought about these bigs for the most part in terms of what their limitations are was shown and came to fruition in this game. Like every concern that you had. And with Berg, it's, is he fast enough? Is he quick enough laterally? Is he athletic enough, mobile enough, that type of thing? And does he have good enough hands? He got 2 post touches. Like 2 true post ups. He turned him over both times. Those things showed up. Concern with Jacobson is he just too small frame, right? Is he just too light? And he got bully ball down low.
I have a different concern on Jacobson. And Joe, maybe you back me up on this. He looked slow.
I don't think he's the most mobile. And I think that's part of the concern of like, he's 7'4", and like if he plays a super deep drop, he can just eat up space because he's 7'4". But you saw him get up a little bit more, like closer to the level, and he just didn't quite have the mobility to get back, I think, all the time. Yeah, I think I would in general agree with you.
My concern with Berg, number one, is his hands, especially if you are there to set screens for Smith, which it did work on the first play, got him a wide open mid-range. But if you can't be trusted to catch the ball or post up with the ball, that's bad. Is Purdue's best, we'll break it down. Is Purdue's best offense with which big on the floor? Start with you, Kraig, and then we'll go to you, Joe.
Are we talking just between Berg and Jacobson?
Nope. Berg first, Jamison, Burgess.
Jamison
battle.
Jacobson.
What?
Jacobson.
He would be the best.
He would be, yes.
I say. All right. I'm gonna say that our best offense is with Jacobson on the floor, just because of what he can provide as a spacer. He only shot 1. It's a sample size of 1. But he hit it. And more important to me is he stepped into it confidently and just drilled it. Like, I mean, I think he was shocked he was that open. Like, don't you guys read scouting reports? But like, once he was like, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to drill this then. And I think his free throw shooting form looked good, even though he was only 2 of 4 on that end. I just think he provides, if you're TKR is going to be your primary post option. I think his ability to step outside and do that provides the best offense.
Joe?
Yeah, I lean Jacobson too, just because the play that sticks out in my mind is not Jacobson making the 3. It was a high pick and roll. TKR sets the screen. Jacobson spaced in the corner, and he drew Kalkbrenner a step or 2 out. And if he can do that, where it's like, honestly, I would rather Jacobson just have that like threat than him. Like, I care about that more than him making a 3 a game. Like, if he takes 1 a game, I don't actually, obviously I want it to go in. Like, you want it to go in, but the threat of him just like making sorry, I have the Grizzlies game on. I just watched Edie chuck up a three he missed, but which is, we're talking about Jacobson now, so it fits. Jacobson being able to draw that big just a little bit out is huge, and if that works, that leads to the best offense because now TKR can post up with space. Braden Smith can run pick and roll with space. You can pick and pop. That just feels like the best.
All right, Kraig, just to give you your chance. We're going to play a little game in a second with all four of these guys. Raleigh Burgess played 5 minutes, and in your defense, Matt Painter did say after the game he thought he probably had the best defensive minutes on the team. What is your case for Raleigh Burgess to be a rotation player this season?
I think when
he was going to redshirt.
It has been thought. I've talked to some people. I've heard from some people that maybe that thought isn't as set in stone as it was at one point in time. Nobody, just to be clear, like nobody super close to the situation or Jacobson themselves, but I think that, or not Jacobson, Burgess. My case for him is this. I think when we look at Jacobson, we say, I think there's some extremes here. Like Berg is big bodied and he can rebound and he can set massive screens. What's he going to do offensively? He has trouble catching the ball. Doesn't really look super comfortable with his shot still. He's been there a couple of years to try to develop that. You look at Jacobson, you say, man, he can do really great things offensively, but he, like I said, got bully balled underneath the rim a couple times, and not just by Kalkbrenner, by the backup too, right? So it wasn't just the All-American center that did that to him.
Their backup center is really good, by the way.
That's fair. That's fair. I'm not really going to get into too much of a debate around Caleb here. I think we've just seen what Caleb can do. My concern there is there was a couple of times where he got the ball and was going into like a dribble handoff situation, but he didn't even look. Like he didn't even look at the rim. This is a guy that shot threes comfortably and confidently as like a freshman. And like he didn't even look at the rim. Like it wasn't even a threat, a possibility. And I just don't know where that confidence has gone. But my takeaway with Burgess is he's the middle of all of these guys. I think he's the most mobile other than first. I think he's the second most mobile behind first. I think he's a way bigger body in terms of weight, sturdiness, and frame. Like he's listed heavier than Jacobson. And if Jacobson is 230, then CJ Cox is 6'4". Okay. I think he's either the best or second best 3-point shooter as a big, just from what we saw in practices and what we've seen in scrimmages. I just think he's the middle ground. And I don't necessarily, I don't agree with a lot of takes from other people outside of the local Purdue coverage. But the one take that I do really agree with strongly here is our big three are good enough to go to an Elite Eight. Our big three with support are probably good enough to go to a Final Four this year, not next year. And if you can confidently tell me that by January 1, you're 100% sure that Burgess isn't the first or second option as a big man, then to me, you can't redshirt. Like you can't. It is so hard to get there to the Elite Eight and the Final Four. And I know you want to save years for everybody, but like we have these three now. We have a top 2-point guard in the country. Sears is the only person in discussion with that right now. We're gonna have. I am positive that TKR is gonna be one of the three best centers or postmen, not center, in the Big Ten. Fletcher is a hell of a 2 guard or 3, whatever you want to call him. Joe and I argued all year last year whether he was a 2 or a 3, but like
he played a 3.
We
last year
we have that right. So I just the 5 is the big question mark to me. So I just don't see how you can throw away an option.
One big point I'll put in your favor is I got to watch the Creighton highlights of the game, which is a massacre. But when you watch it, Raleigh Burgess is bigger than you think. Like he's a legit 6'11" with long arms. And you can tell, like, when you watch his high school tape, he played inside. He banged. He looked for physicality inside. He looked to close off stuff. Jacobson did not. Caleb First has been iffy on that throughout most of his career. He's better as a perimeter big, kind of switching and offering up that. And Berg is obviously has the limitations of mobility. There is a lot in Raleigh Burgess's favor. Joe, if you can say whether you agree with that or not, but if Burgess plays real minutes this season, doesn't redshirt, who falls out of the rotation?
It's probably, I just assume it would be first because they are the most overlapping in terms of what they bring. I'm starting to like, I'm going to start out by saying Burgess, I watched his high school film. It did not pop for me at all. And
Really?
I'm thinking I maybe caught games where he was still like working his way back from injury and stuff. And so I'm coming in with a blank slate of like, I've seen him for 5 minutes now. Everything else is just stuff I've heard. So like, I've been definitely more on the red shirt train. Even in the past day or two, it's starting to be like, well, yeah, like maybe you just you don't use the red shirt and then you just run the risk of like, oh, he doesn't actually get in the rotation and you waste a year, but maybe you just take that risk because it might be worth it. I don't know why I still have some faith that first can play spot minutes and be at times even the best center of the four and be what they need. And so like that's I think what holds me back the most from being more in on Burgess. But I'm also like, it's not like I'm steadfast in it. Like if Burgess comes out and gets 10 minutes over like 10 minutes a game for the first 3 or 4 games and just looks really good, then like, yeah, it's just like, okay, no, he needs to get minutes. I'm not like going to hold on to Caleb first or anything like that. But I'm hesitant mainly because I haven't seen enough, I guess, quality film of him at this point. But that's that could just very well be a me thing.
Yeah. I still too hearken to the days of Caleb First being a borderline like star threatening player off the bench the first couple years. Maybe it's because I was in person for that Portland game against Duke where he was phenomenal. The second best player on the floor.
Yeah.
That he still moves in a way that makes me just I don't know why it's not better on both ends of the floor.
That might be it too. It should be better.
Yeah.
And he moves the best out of those 4. But Burgess could just be that version of First right away. Like there is that chance too, that he's just that Duke First that we talk about. He could just be that right away. Maybe. I don't know.
I get the sneaking suspicion if you're right, Kraig. I think it'll be Bird that falls out of the line. I don't know. I think it is going to be the toughest redshirt decision in Painter's career. And
I agree.
I mean, he's admitted he's gotten it wrong before on redshirts.
Yeah. Specifically.
And Ryan Smith, I think as well.
Okay.
Is one that he missed. Do you think, Kraig, that there will be a happy solution by February?
Like happy.
There will be a rotation set and it will be good.
By
or
February?
Will Purdue be plagued by this all season? Purdue can still be good with a 5 that's underperforming.
I mean, they almost beat Creighton on the road.
Yeah.
In an exhibition.
I mean, we went to the Elite 8 with Matt Harms. So like, yeah.
I would argue Matt Harms does more things at close to an elite level than any of the bigs showcased against Creighton.
Right, but that was also junior Matt Harms that year.
Correct.
Yeah. And we've seen a very small sample size this year.
Well, that's what I'm asking. So you're expecting this to...
Yeah. I think Daniel Jacobson can be sophomore Matt Harms at least by February.
Okay.
And he's going to keep on putting on weight. He's going to go into their nutrition program and he's going to be lifting weights now on a college level. I think he'll put on weight. I think he'll get bulkier. I don't think he's going to put on enough to like be super physical. But I think he's one of those guys that can do it more. I mean, Harms wasn't super physical. Like he just, is mobile enough, I think, and can use his length to still block shots and still disrupt things. And with his offensive tendencies, I think he can be good by February. And if I get my way, if I get my hope, then we also have a second big that I think would be really good by February.
Joe, is there a world where it's all three of the, or I guess we're talking four guys. Berg first, Jacobson, Burgess. Is there a world where all of them play near that 10-minute mark and it switches game to game?
Yeah, I wouldn't say like I don't expect to see four guys play 10 minutes, but I could see like a two guys play 20 minutes type thing, and then it's not going to be this clean, but for hyperbole's sake, two guys play 20 minutes one game, the other two play at the other game. If you're going to play, maybe against like Vlad Golden or whatever, you want to go more of the Berg route or Jacobson, but against Iowa, right, with Freeman, you maybe want to go more first Burgess or mix in or have one of each for each side. I think there is real potential that they all bring enough unique things at the spot that you can call upon who you need to call upon for a given game.
Okay. Final question. Is it just play Trey at the 5? And is that the dagger to teams when Purdue really needs it? Start with you, Kraig. We didn't get it at all against Creighton. But is there a lineup lurking with Trey at the 5, whether you want, I mean, it's pretty much got to be Heidi at the 4, I assume. And then any combination of the other guys, Colvin, Cox, Harris, Lawyer, Smith. I think you can make an argument that you can make a feasible lineup out of any of those guards with Heidi and Trey at the 4 and 5.
Yeah, I was shocked that we didn't see it at all because, I mean, Painter said, if anybody's listened to Painter the last 2 months, if you thought that was going to be the starting lineup this weekend, then you didn't actually listen to anything he was saying the last 2 months. But he said over and over again that he plans to use it some. So I was shocked that we didn't see it at all. I thought really we'd see maybe 10, 12 minutes of it. I think maybe one of the reasons we didn't was because there's such a big question mark at the 5, and he needed to run all of those guys enough time to try to get a look at it, to see what they could do there. But I don't, if we run, like, I love it offensively. But if we run TKR at the 5, we might have to score 90 a game.
Painter did mention after the game that part of the reason why he didn't is Creighton is a really hard team to play small against. Kalkbrenner, they've got a big who could shoot at the 4. Makes it difficult. There are going to be teams in the Big Ten where it's going to be very hard to play small against. You're not probably playing small against IU this year. Probably not going to work out in your favor. But yeah, Joe, just same question. Do you feel like TKR at the 5, especially with the rhythm that him and Smith already seem to be in with the pick and roll, surrounding that with 3 shooters? And then defensively, if you're going to give up buckets all the time anyway, in theory, if you put more athletes out there, you can play a little bit different, a little more aggressive. Does the offense look as good as it sounds like it might?
I would think so. And I'm going to be a big proponent of TKR at the 5. I have been all off season. There was a point in time where like it did seem like it was going that way. And I don't remember exactly when that was in the off season, but there was a point in time that was like, it was like, oh yeah, that's what it's going to be. Obviously it's gone away from that. That last point that you make of like, if your defense is bad anyways, like why not just put the best offensive lineup out there? And if your defense is marginally worse, your offense could be much better. I think I don't think it'll happen, and I don't think Painter will want to. I think you can run it against big lineups. And it goes back to like, if you're going to give up points anyways against IU, have Renew guarding Cam Heidi. Like, good luck. Like, have Heidi be a backup, have Heidi screen and pick and pop. Different things like that. Like, but then on the other end, right, Heidi then has to guard Renew. That's not good luck with that. Also, I understand it goes both ways. I think you can just play so different. You could you could run a lineup if you really wanted to. Like if you're trying to counter it, then it's maybe Braden, CJ, Jakari, Heidi, TKR, and you have two perimeter defenders out there, and you're just banking on, hey, we're gonna just not play like normal Purdue, and we're gonna cause a little more havoc. We're gonna force a few more turnovers. Yes, we're gonna get burned a decent bit. And TKR does have to stay out of foul trouble if he's guarding post up fives, but it could just be a lot of fun offensively. And I just want to see fun.
Yeah, Purdue traps in the post anyway. They're not putting their big men on islands down low. That's one of your bigger concerns. And it's easier to rotate around when everyone's the same size. I think you could argue maybe Bradenless lineups is where you really think about putting TKR at the 5. If you're 5 minutes,
as long as somebody
can
get him on the short roll, somebody has to be able to pass to him on the short roll still.
Yeah, I will tell you this: they didn't bring CJ Cox on to be a passer. Best quote of the summer. PJ was telling me, talking about CJ and what they're telling me, like, you are a better shot maker than decision maker. Shoot the ball. But yeah, it does excite me. The first time that lineup comes out, it's going to be very good. But I think we've been on here, over an hour. Kraig, where can they find all your stuff? Obviously, you guys share YouTube.
Yeah. So Brags in the Stand channel, the Boilers in the Stand show is on the Brags in the Stand channel on YouTube. And then you can find us at Boilers in the Stands on Apple Pod or Spotify. You can find me at Kraig Bowers 34 as Boiler Diehard on Twitter, and also lead the Boiler Diehards Facebook group as well. I think that's all. Yes, like 14,000 people or so. It's gotten smaller as football season has progressed. I've had to kick a lot more people out. But nonetheless, primarily a really good group of people and Purdue fans over there for sure. So I think that's it, unless I need to give my social security number too.
Yeah, Boiler Diehard it's probably the safest Purdue space. Twitter's not great. Lot of issues there. Joe, where can they find you? I know you're also Feed the Post on YouTube, I believe.
Yes, so Feed the Post on YouTube. That's a lot of college basketball film breakdown. Also started a Substack, Feed the Post, where that is going to be a lot of my Big Ten content. You can follow me on Twitter at Joe Jackson CBB. Between those three, Boilers in the Stands post game shows, putting out a lot of content this year.
Previews. Yeah, we got Purdue previews too this year, right?
Oh,
that's all I was saying, Joe. That's something we're doing new. The first one was very successful in terms of people that watch that. So I think we're planning to continue to do that, Joe. Yeah, we see. This is how we do it at Boilers in the Stands, Casey. We make business decisions. Like, we don't actually talk and have meetings. We just make business decisions on the fly.
Right. Briggs just shows up randomly. That's how it goes. All right. Did we miss anything, guys? Is there any hot take that you want to get off your chest? Any?
I don't think I have a hot take. I think my hot take is still I believe in first. I think that's about it.
I do too. He didn't miss protecting the rim by much on a couple plays, and he got fouled on that dunk attempt.
He did.
Yeah. I don't have any hot takes. I'll just keep saying it over and over again. Like, we don't need to be overreactionary on a lot of guys who saw their first minutes against a top 15 team, against an All-American center, against an offense that is probably one of the 4 or 5 most elite offenses in the country in terms of what they run and how they do it. And they had playmakers to be able to do it well. Like I've been saying all off seasons, have patience with this team as they figure things out. And especially like some of the overreactionary takes to me are just a little bit mind-boggling. There are real reasons to be concerned, right? But there are some that have been a little bit out there.
Yeah, I think we had a lot of question marks about the big men, but generally, when it comes to answers for big men around Purdue with that coaching staff and all their players, the answers usually turn out better than you thought. If we were at this pod 5 years ago, we all would have been talking about Zach Edey redshirting.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I
any of
remember
those-
saying like, I don't know if he can catch the ball. Like, I just don't know if he can. Like the first whatever exhibition game or scrimmage that I saw him playing, and it was like, I don't know if he'll ever.
He did put up like 19-9 his first actual game, though.
Yeah.
Right. There's that.
Sneaky thing, good hands. I trust big men with good hands, which is why I think Jacobson will be fine, Burgess will be fine. But yeah, I think that's all the damage we can do. Obviously this week, one more exhibition game. Then it's a full season. Check in with Boilers in the Stands, feed the post, Boiler Upload on the Rivals Network. Thanks for watching.